Welcome to Luann's Creative Corner. I'm a librarian at a community college and I run a craft program for kids. Since we aren't able to have activities in person right now, this video is a virtual way to still have an activity. This will be our first ever Valentine's Day activity. We will be making a 5x7 card with paper weaving on the front and a fun heart-to-heart spiral pop-up on the inside. I'm showing here a couple of cards that I created as samples for the activity. So let's get started. For the front, you will need a piece of cardstock cut to 4 3/4 by 6 3/4 with a heart shape cut from the center. You can use a large heart die cut to form the window, or use a heart stencil and scissors to cut the window. Or fold the piece in half and cut a heart that way, if you don't mind a fold line showing on your window piece. Here I'm considering what color of heart window I would like for these woven pieces. For the loom, which is the piece to weave the strips through, I cut a piece of cardstock to 4 1/2 by 5 1/2. I then used my paper trimmer to cut slits every 1/2 inch, leaving an uncut margin of cardstock on both sides, just smaller than 1/2 inch. I found that the best way to cut slits like this was to position my paper where I wanted the first slit, then position the blade in the center of the area I was going to cut before bringing the blade to the paper. Then carefully cut the slit, stopping the cut just past 1/2 at the bottom and just past 5 inches at the top, so at about 5 1/8. I found that cutting the slit an extra 1/8 inch long on each side gave some helpful wiggle room while doing the weaving. To cut the next slit, I left my blade where I had ended the previous cut and then adjusted my paper by 1/2 inch and just continued that pattern until all the slits were cut. You could also use a ruler and an X-Acto knife to cut the slits, or you could fold the paper in half and use scissors. I did that on my first attempt, which I'm showing here. I'm not sure how well it shows in the video, but there is a very visible crease running right through the center, which you don't get when you use a paper trimmer to cut your loom. Now you'll need cardstock strips in several colors in whatever widths you would like. I cut most of mine to be 1/2 inch wide, but I did make one sample using some wider and some thinner strips. Use a simple over-under pattern to weave your first strip through the loom. Then slide that strip down to the very edge before starting your second cardstock strip. If you started with over for your first strip, start with under for your second strip, then continue the pattern with under, over, and also slide that one, tighten it up. As you'll see, as I'm tightening mine, I'm turning to the back to tighten the strips, pull them tighter to each other. That way, if my fingers make any marks in the cardstock, then it won't show on the front. Continue adding strips in this way. Under, over, and then over, under. I found that the last strip was the most difficult to weave because there isn't much room left and cardstock is quite rigid. I tried a couple of ways to make it easier to weave that last strip. The best solution I found was to fold a piece of tape over the end of the last strip before starting to weave it in. The tape is more flexible and can be pushed between the slits, allowing the cardstock to be pulled through with it. Just slow down a little and patiently push the tip of the tape between the slits. Pull the tape through and the cardstock will follow. Push the tape over and under through the slits, pull on it, and that last little bit of cardstock will follow. If your loom rips a bit during this step, don't worry. You can tape it back together, or don't even worry about it, because it won't show. You'll be covering it with a heart window. Adding the tape to that cardstock strip is sort of like using a needle when you sew, except in this case, you need your needle to be very flexible. If you have some tweezers, that might also help during this step. Carefully tighten up your woven strips one last time. You want to have that nice basket weave look. Then, cut the ends of longer cardstock strips, the ones that are hanging off the edge, so that they are even with the edge of your loom. Now, attach your woven piece to the heart window. Center the heart window over the woven piece, making sure the edges are completely hidden behind the edges of the cardstock. When you like how it is aligned, use a strip of tape to anchor it in place. I then glued it more firmly in place using some Eileen's tacky glue. Any wet glue that you have would work. Even a glue stick would probably work here. Now, attach the entire piece to the front of your card base. Your card base is a 7x10 piece of cardstock folded in half to create a 5x7 card. I used Eileen's tacky glue here as well to glue this to the card base. There are quite a few layers here with all of this cardstock and the woven piece, and so I felt that wet glue would work best here. If you only have a glue stick, you could try it here and see. Just make sure to apply a lot of glue so that it will stick firmly to the front of your card base. Now it's time to decorate the front of the card. I used a white gel pen just to add a few accents to the front of the card. A little border around the heart window, a few hearts and some wavy lines. I thought that white would stand out really nicely against the dark purple of that heart window piece. If you have a white colored pencil, that would work to give the same effect here as well. Or some sparkly gel pens would work nicely here. You could really decorate this any way you like. Some stickers, markers. I printed a variety of Valentine's Day sentiments onto some colored paper. For this one, for the front, I'm choosing to do the Friends Forever sentiment. And I'll use a couple of these sentiments also on the inside. If you have some Valentine's Day stamps, hearts, different Valentine's Day sentiments, you could certainly use those as well to decorate the front of your card. I'm using a glue stick to adhere my sentiment strips. Since the paper is very thin, I thought a glue stick would work better. If you're using wet glue, make sure to apply a very thin coat so that it won't wrinkle your paper. Now for the inside of your card. You will need 2 heart shapes cut from cardstock and a spiral piece which I've cut from paper. You'll see I have a variety here. I had some nice marble paper that I die cut some hearts from. I decided to do 1 marble heart and 1 solid heart, but the solid heart I wanted it to be a little darker, so I went around the edges with an ink and a sponge. I decided I also wanted to add a little color to the border of the inside of my card, so I used the ink and the sponge there as well to add a little bit of purple ink around the sides. The sponge that I'm using is just a simple makeup sponge that I got from the dollar store. I was going for kind of a messy, uneven look here. The square corners of the sponge really worked out well for that. Now on to our spiral pop-up. You just need a small piece of colored paper for this. If you want to draw your spiral first before you cut it out, that's a great way to make sure that you're happy with what your spiral looks like. The diameter of the circle around the outside of the spiral should be about 3 inches. If you wanted to make it a little larger, you could. And then you just use scissors to cut out a spiral until you go right down to the center of the circle and make a little spring there. If you don't want to draw your spiral first, just cut a piece of paper to be 3x3. Then trim off the edges, and there you have your circle to start from. And it definitely doesn't have to be perfect. And then trim and just try to make sure that the arms of your spiral are pretty even to each other. But again, it definitely doesn't have to be perfect. You'll still get that spiral effect in your pop-up. And if you don't like it, just do another one because it's just a little scrap of paper. So there you have the spiral pop-up. The spiral piece I'm using here is actually from a die cut, which makes it a whole lot easier. I like to lay out my pieces first and plan where they're going to go before I glue them down. 1 heart needs to go in the bottom left-hand corner, and then the center of your spiral kind of matches up to the center of that heart, and then your second heart will match up to the arm that's coming out of your spiral, and you kind of want to center that up over that. So once you're happy with how it all works out, and check the edges too, that nothing is going over the edge of your paper. Glue that first heart down into that bottom left-hand corner. I put some double-sided adhesive right in the center of the spiral, and I just removed that release paper there and then glued it to the center of my heart. Make sure that the outside arm of your spiral is on the right, and then center that heart upside down over it. Add glue to the back of the second heart. Then close the card on the heart so that it will adhere to the top portion of the card. Smooth the card to make sure the heart is glued down. When you open the card, your spiral pop-up piece from heart to heart is complete. Now you can add some additional sentiments to the inside of your card. I like to add one right in the center of that top heart, just to kind of cover over the end of where the spiral attaches to the center of your heart. I also added a sentiment along the bottom of the second heart. And there's a nice space by that bottom heart to write a personalized message for the recipient of your card. Since the card had a lot of layers on the front, I added a cardstock layer to the back. That balances the card a bit and adds a nice finish to it. You could put that layer instead inside the card before you add your hearts and spiral piece. So there you have a card for Valentine's Day with paper weaving on the front and a heart-to-heart spiral pop-up on the inside. I wanted to show one last element that you could add. You can add small die cuts or stickers to the spiral, as you can see that I've done on this card. Just make sure that if you use glue to attach die cuts, that it doesn't seep out and make a sticky spot on the spiral. If you use stickers and they extend over the edge of the spiral, put a matching sticker under it so that the sticky part won't stick when you close the card. I hope you enjoy making this Valentine's Day card with paper weaving and a spiral pop-up. This card could be used for many other occasions just by changing up the sentiments, because hearts work for all sorts of things. Also, you could change the shapes. A star-shaped window, a flower-shaped window, or a butterfly-shaped window would be a lot of fun. Some of you may remember that I made a video for a space-themed spiral pop-up card for Father's Day, which I'll link to here. I would love to see pictures of the cards you create. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.